When Tesla announced the Model 3 back in spring of 2016, they received over 500,000 in pre-orders. That's 582,000 individuals who put $1,000 down just for the chance to drive this car eventually. To give you an idea, the best-selling luxury sports sedan, which is the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, sold just shy of 75,000 units back in 2017. This car had 7.5 times more in pre-orders than the Mercedes-Benz C-Class. However, since its introduction, this car has been on a roller coaster in the press. Everything from rumors on how some of the body panels have been hammered by hand to quality and reliability issues, and all the way to the fact that Tesla is so behind on its production that some people have had to cancel their orders because they just didn't want to wait that long. So, is this car just hype, or does it live up to the fanfare? Well, that's what we're going to find out in today's video.
Exterior styling is inherently Tesla. From the lack of a front grille to LED headlights that curve around the hood, the design is sleek with nice bulges near the front wheel arches and flush door handles on the side. You can tell that their main purpose was aerodynamics, and they succeeded with a stunning drag coefficient of 0.23. To give you an idea, the Toyota Prius, probably the most well-known hybrid, has a drag coefficient of 0.26. The rear of the vehicle also follows its Tesla roots. Although this does not provide the versatility of a fastback, the Model 3 retains the same styling as its larger Model S brother. The taillights have been slightly modified and have a unique curved LED that lights up when you're driving at night. Overall, you can tell the car is shorter in length as compared to its Model S sibling. Even though the wheelbase is only 3.8 inches shorter than the S at 113.2 inches, the 3 looks slightly stubbier and less premium due to its size.
Although I don't think this car is particularly stunning, it definitely turns heads. Whether that's because people think of it as a shrunken down Model S, or because they like the styling, or because they know what this car is and they stand behind the idea of an electric car for the masses. Regardless, the brand carries presence and this car grabs attention. So what kind of power plant can you find under the hood? Well, none. Because this is an electric car, the battery is located under the vehicle, so instead of a conventional engine that you would find, there's a frunk. So this is just an added convenience of having extra storage space when you have an electric car, because you don't need a giant place for a big engine right in the middle. But this isn't the only place for storage. Let's move on to the back.
In the back, you'll find a conventional trunk, and combined with the frunk, you get 15 cubic feet of storage space. Although I think the opening is very large given the high level of the trunk struts, I wish they would have mirrored the Model 3 with a large fastback trunk. I think it's a unique touch and speaks Tesla design. Car and Driver claims that you can fit 4 carry-on luggage-sized bags with the seats up, and up to 15 carry-on bags with the seats down.
Now, before we get inside, I'd like to talk about the 3 or so different ways that you can lock and unlock this car. The first is via an app. So that's going to be the primary way you're going to lock and unlock the car. It's going to be connected via Bluetooth to your automobile. So as you approach, the car will unlock, and as you walk away, the car will lock. The second way is if you're going to give it to a friend to borrow for whatever reason. You probably shouldn't, but if you need to, Tesla gives you this little credit card, which really gives you an image on how to use it. Really, you tap it here to lock it, and you tap it here to unlock it. Now, once you sit down, you'll place this key on the center arm console, and that will activate the car, and then you can put it wherever you want. But what about the third way to unlock this car? Well, as of about a few days ago, Tesla released a Tesla key that you can order for about $100 to $150, and you can use it just like you would on any other Model S or Model X. It has its own little key fob, and it'll have some of the similarities where you can open the trunk and the frunk and unlock the car and lock it through that key as well. So those are the three different ways to get in the car. Now these handles are pretty interesting because they have a pivoting action. You actually push in on one end and pull out on the other, and that will open the door. So let's get inside and take this car for a ride.
Let's start off with the interior of this car. Now, one word comes to mind that I think best describes the interior, and that word is simple. Now, by simple, I don't mean that it's cheap or unrefined. I mean that it's different. It is simple because there's only a steering wheel and a center display, and that's it. There's nothing else. There's not really any other buttons in this car. And I think that's a good thing, because if you're going to be a different type of brand and you want to be different, then why not have a different interior? Why do you want to stick to, the typical dashboard with the screen in the middle, a steering wheel, and then another screen on the side? You want to be different, and this car definitely accomplishes that. Let's start off with the door. So the door is actually operated by a button located just right where your thumb would sit on the grab handle. The door opens and closes pretty well. It is frameless because it's like a coupe design. Everything actually is very soft touch material throughout the entire car. Even down here where typically you would find a plastic part or, something that is definitely not paid attention to as much would be plastic. This is actually soft touch material. So the entire door is soft touch. Where you're resting your elbow, you've got a little suede Alcantara insert on the side of the door, and that looks really nice and it feels really nice. You've got automatic up-down windows and a piano black finish, and then you've got a little bit of storage space down at the bottom with space for a bottle holder as well. Other than that, there's not much more to discuss on the door. The door actually has more buttons than anywhere else on the car, so that's kind of the most similar to any other car you can find, but again, pretty soft touch, and I'm impressed. There's a speaker down at the bottom. There's also a speaker up near the side view mirror that is a second speaker on the door, so there's actually two on each side, and then there's one up near the A-pillar, which is really nice to see. So you have already 6 speakers just in the front of the car that are visible. I'm sure there are many more than that, but I just don't see them. Moving over to the dashboard, you've got a rubbery type material up at the top. Again, not the softest material, but it isn't the scratchy, hard plastic that I would expect. It's actually not too bad. You've got this really nice wood trim that runs from the driver to the passenger side. Now, I think this is the only color they currently offer, but I'm sure in the future they'll offer a different color as well. I like how it feels. It's kind of like an unrefined, unpolished wood grain, but I really like the feel of it. It doesn't seem cheap, and I think it's real wood, which is surprising because you would think sometimes they would throw in like a wood kind of covering or a vinyl covering over some piece of plastic and claim that it's wood, but I think this is real natural wood, so a nice touch on Tesla's part. You've got some nice brushed aluminum near the vent and down near the bottom of the wood trim. Now let's move on to the vent, which is probably my favorite part of this car aside from the panoramic moonroof. The vent is really well designed. Like, I didn't expect it to be so ingenious in its creation, but in every car I'm in, the vents always hit my hands, and they heat up or cool down my hands without ever really hitting my face. Like, you got to really adjust it and play around with the vents in order for it to hit correctly on your face. Here, I didn't really have to touch anything. Because the vent is designed the way it is, and because this display is off to the right-hand side, the vent actually blows air right through the hole in the steering wheel and hits my face directly. So I'm constantly getting the temperature of air that I want hitting my face, and my body's able to regulate its temperature much better than when it hits my hands and my face is still cold, or, it's not able to hit the right angle and it takes me a minute to adjust. I think this vent design is ingenious, and I'm glad that Tesla figured out a way to do this, because I think it's been a long time coming. Moving over to the passenger side, there's not much to it. Same exact design, same exact materials. You've got, I think, more speakers up near the front of the dashboard. The only difference with the passenger side is, of course, you have a glove box, and it's operated via this center console, like a tablet. You push the button and it'll unlock the glove box. One gripe I have with this car, I think the glove box is a little too small. Given that this car is a bit smaller, it would be nice to have some more storage space in certain areas. The glove box being one example of that. But regardless, I think it's good that it's there. I know some cars are even omitting those entirely, and I think it's cool that you operate it via this tablet that you have in the middle. Coming over to the center arm console, you have these piano black finishes. They're just magnetic little doors and hinges that open up and provide for some extra storage space. You have a place where you can hook up your iPhone or Android device. It's not fast charging, which is also something I think they should have added in this car. But regardless, it's cool that you can plug in your phone and charge it there without having to buy a plug. They also have a USB cable down at the bottom in the actual storage area where you can hook up your electronic devices. This storage space isn't too bad. I like the size of it. It's probably bigger than the one that you have in your center arm console, which doesn't have that much space. You've got this little removable compartment that you can throw your knickknacks in. Other than that, there's not too much space over here. You can fit a few things here and there, but you're not going to fit anything large. The arm console is pretty soft material. It's the same padding that you have on the door panels and pretty much in a lot of other places on this car. So it's not bad. It's not the softest, but again, not bad. What I think is really soft actually is the seats of this car. This particular model I think has the upgraded leather option, but these seats you can tell are genuine leather and they're very soft, and the heated function works really well on them. So I'm not sure how the heated function works on the regular seats, but on these more upgraded ones, I really like how they work. They feel really nice. They're very soft and plush. The bolstering isn't fantastic, of course, but this isn't meant to be a sports car. It's a sports sedan, so I can't give it any complaints on that. What I do complain is they don't have a ventilated seat option, which I'm surprised why they don't, but maybe that will come sometime in future models. But again, a lot of other competitors are throwing this in, and I'm surprised that Tesla didn't. Now let's move on to the back seats and see what we have there. Now for rear seat space, it's definitely not class leading, but it's not bad. This is me sitting behind myself, probably a little bit further than I would usually sit, and I still have a few inches of legroom. What's nice is because of this glass paneling up top, you have the illusion of a lot more headroom because it kind of juts inwards. So I really like that feature. It's got to be one of my most favorite features of this car because you can look up at the stars, and it's beautiful here, and it's not super bright because it's tinted glass. So other than that, the back seats are pretty comfortable. You have the same type of material going from the front all the way to the back. You've got soft touch up here. You've got nice Alcantara suede over here. So nonetheless, it is also a very nice place to be. Now let's talk about the giant elephant in the room, and it is gigantic, and that is this center display. Very good job on the part of Tesla of making this really a buttonless car aside from a few on the steering wheel and the door. Everything is controlled via this center display console. So it's very intuitive and fairly easy to use if you've ever used one in a Tesla before, or if you're familiar with using a tablet or an iPad. This is very similar to that. I mean, the biggest learning curve is really figuring out which button or which menu will operate different features of this car. For example, this morning I was struggling turning on the windshield wipers because I didn't really know how to control it with this little stalk on the steering wheel, and I realized that I think most of it is controlled via this screen. So that's the biggest learning curve, is figuring out, you know, what is controlled here and where to find it within a certain amount of seconds, because you're used to finding those things in a regular car pretty quickly because it's pretty standard across the industry. Everything is relatively easy to use. I mean, you've got sub-menus here at the bottom that you can control your climate, you can control your heated seats, and I'm pretty sure these are
customizable, so you can move them around and do what you want with them. You can control your volume. Once you get into the Maps feature, you pretty much have Google Maps, which is one of the best, if not the best, map system on the market right now. You can search for whatever you want, just like you would in Google. And then you have your car always on the left-hand side. This is what's going to show you, what cars are approaching your vehicle, how far you are from hitting something, what speed you're going, whether you're in park or drive, reverse, neutral, etc. You can also turn on your rear camera for whatever reason. You turn on your charging ports, and you can also control this car via voice. So most of what's relevant to your car is on the left-hand side of the screen, and that will always be on, it'll always be available. You can't really get rid of this little side menu, but then everything else is controlled via these touchscreen buttons and layouts, and you can play around with it. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that go into more depth about this screen. I'm not an expert on it, that's why I'm not going to talk in depth about it, but I think there are a lot of other people who have. So definitely check those out if you're interested. So now we've talked about the exterior, we've talked about the interior, from the front seats to the back seats to this pretty simple and intuitive center console. So now let's get it on the road and take it for a spin. I'm going to use this key. So to turn on the car, essentially you just tap it down here at the bottom and the car is on. So let's get on the road and see how this thing drives. So here we are setting off in the Tesla Model 3. To give you some background, I've actually never sat in a Tesla before, and I definitely have never driven in one. So this is kind of a first experience for me in general, driving an electric car. Now, first impressions of this vehicle, and I have mentioned this in the video already, but the quality and the attention to detail on the interior definitely surprises me. When I first picked up this car, I figured that, with all the stuff you hear in the news, that the interior quality would be that of a mid-2000s General Motors vehicle. So I'm thoroughly surprised that the interior of this car really isn't that much different than any of its other competitors, like the Mercedes C-Class or BMW 3 Series. Granted, those cars may be a little bit more luxurious, but I wouldn't say this is any worse by any means. I mean, it's just more modern, more technologically advanced. That doesn't mean that it's not as nice of an interior. The car isolates you pretty well from the exterior noises. Yes, you might hear some of that wind noise, but I don't think that's because the interior quality is bad. I think it's because the way this car is designed, the aerodynamics of the vehicle, allow air to pass over this vehicle and around it much easier than some other vehicles. I mean, the drag coefficient on this car is just amazing when you compare it to a lot of other vehicles that this car competes with. So I think that's part of the reason why you hear a lot more wind noise, is because you naturally have a lot more wind kind of flowing around you. In terms of ride comfort, this car is just as soft as any other sports sedan. It's actually softer than the previous generation C-Class that I owned. I'm driving over this pretty bumpy road. This is probably the bumpiest road we have here in Utah, and I'm not being shooken up, I'm not being beat up on the road. I'm driving as if I'm driving any other luxury vehicle. Again, another thing that I'm surprised about, because I kept hearing how this car is just, put together with the scraps of the Model S, and honestly, I'm not getting that experience from it. I mean, it's just as refined as any other sports sedan. I haven't driven the Model S, so I can't speak in terms of that, but it's not much different than anything else this car competes with. Now, I think the most impressive part of this car has to do with the acceleration. I mean, it's instant, instant torque, and I knew that coming into it. I knew that battery and electric power have that instant power, instant torque, but it's still, it's one thing knowing it and one thing actually feeling it, and it's phenomenal. I mean, the power that this thing provides is just dangerous to a certain extent, because you don't really know how fast you're going, because the car doesn't make any sound. Like, in a naturally aspirated, or I should say, in an internal combustion engine, when you're driving, you can
hear the gear changes, you know that it's revving up higher. Once you go through 2 or 3 gears in an internal combustion engine, you can probably assume that you're going, at least 60 or 70 miles an hour. In this car, since there's only 1 gear, it's stop and go, that's it, you can't really get a reference for how fast you're going. There's no gear changes, there's no sound, there's no RPM. You don't really have that connection with the road, so you can just blink and all of a sudden you're at 70 miles an hour, you're going 80 miles an hour, and you don't even know, because that's how this car is engineered. And it's really interesting because it's different than any other automobile I've ever driven. When it comes to handling, it doesn't surprise me that this car handles pretty well. I mean, that has to do with the fact that the center of gravity is really low to the ground. I mean, you've got the battery pack right underneath where I'm sitting right now, and thankfully because of that, you're really good on corners. I've taken several turns pretty aggressively, and this car handles probably a little bit better than your standard C-Class or 3 Series, just because of the fact that that low center of gravity provides for that added handling.
Now, like I had mentioned earlier, driving this car on the highway, it's not much different than any other competitor. But driving in the city, it does take some getting to used to, specifically their regenerative braking system. So what that does in this car is, as soon as you let go of the gas pedal, for example, you'll have the car apply brakes so that it can recharge some of the battery using the heat and the friction from the braking system. Really cool concept, really cool idea, but it does take getting used to, because you don't really expect to do that when you're driving in a regular car and wanting to coast. When you let go of the gas, it usually just goes the same speed you're typically going, whereas here, it's gonna drop your speed down quickly. So you're gonna feel those G-forces kind of going in the opposite direction, as if you are applying the brakes, but you're not, the car is. Now you can adjust the settings and the sensitivity of this in this center console, and I've played around with it a little bit, and I actually turned it off at one point, and after I did that, it felt more like a normal vehicle. But if you're wanting to get the most amount of efficiency out of your car, you're gonna have to keep that regenerative braking on, and so you're gonna have to get used to driving a little bit differently. I think the biggest thing is the cars behind you will have to be careful if they see a Model 3 in front of them, because they're gonna know that they're braking generally pretty aggressively, more than you normally would when you're approaching a stop sign or a stoplight. Let us check out this acceleration one more time and see how it goes. Wow, that is crazy. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. Now, to use Autopilot, you're simply going to double tap down on this drive stick over here, and we're in Autopilot mode. I mean, now it's going to be essentially steering and doing everything at whatever cruise control speed that I set. So we can increase it to the speed limit here, which is 70, and the car is going to essentially follow the lanes of the road. It's really mind-boggling and crazy. I mean, it still wants you to hold on to the steering wheel, but regardless, it's fantastic what this car can do.
Now we're just pulling up to a Tesla Supercharger station, so I'll kind of show you how it works and what you're supposed to do, but let's take a look and see how we can charge or supercharge our Tesla Model 3. So first thing we're gonna do, we're parked here, we're gonna hit this charge port open button. So it opened it up in the rear view. That's actually a super simple and easy process. It's quicker than pumping your gas. You literally just push that button to open it. You can even put the charging port next to the connector and it'll open up that little door, and you plug it in and that's it. The car does the rest. I mean, it tells me how much I'm getting per minute, 4 miles per minute in this case, and how much time I have remaining. So a really super easy and simple process. Unfortunately, that means I have to sit here for about an hour, but regardless, it's not awful. So there is how it works. So while we wait for the Tesla to charge, let's talk about the different models that you can get for the Model 3. So Tesla offers 3 different trims, so to speak. Now, the first trim that Tesla offers for the Model 3 is the medium range battery. That is a single motor, so it's a rear-wheel drive car, and has a range of around 260 miles, a top speed of 125 miles per hour, and does 0 to 60 in about 5.6 seconds. That car has a starting price of approximately $46,000 before any incentives. Now, the next model up from that one is the long-range battery, which is the one I'm driving in today. It's a dual motor design, so it's all-wheel drive. It has a range of 310 miles. It has a top speed of 145 miles per hour and does 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. This model starting price is around $53,000, excluding any incentives, but this particular model that I'm driving in today is around $58,000 because of the color and the leather option that adds a little bit of an extra price. Now, the third and final trim that Tesla offers is the performance model. So that one is also a dual motor all-wheel drive configuration. The range is also 310 miles, so it's the same battery pack I have in my car, but the 0 to 60 time is 3.3 seconds, blazingly quick, and the top speed is 155 miles per hour. Now, you do pay a pretty penny for that extra performance and top speed, and so the performance model starts at $64,000, and it can go up from there. Now, the $35,000 Model 3 that Tesla advertised when this car first came out is currently not available. That's going to be the standard battery, and according to Tesla, it's going to be coming out in the next 4 to 6 months. In my opinion, I think that's probably going to be the next year or 2 when they're going to release that product. So if you are wanting to get that model, I think you would have to wait a little bit longer if you are committed to getting the $35,000 Tesla. So what is the verdict? If you have around $55,000 to spend on a sports sedan, should you get the Model 3 or should you go with one of the other competitors? Well, my answer to the question is yes, you should, but give it a few years. I am thoroughly impressed with this automobile. I mean, essentially, this car is 5 different cars packed into one. It is an electric car, so you have 0 emissions, aside from the fact that they need to burn natural gas or coal to get the electricity for these superchargers. That's a whole nother question. This car does not have a tailpipe. It's 0 emissions. You're driving an electric car, a car of the future. This car is also an autonomous vehicle. The Autopilot feature works surprisingly well, and although it's not perfect, I think a lot of federal regulation stops it from going to the next level. So I think this car is equipped with technology today that you can use 5-10 years from now when the regulation changes and you're able to drive this car through a software update that makes it completely autonomous. I mean, you've got cameras in the B-pillar as well as the Tesla emblem on the side of the car that aren't really used right now, but will be used once this car is fully autonomous. So you're not just getting an electric car, you're also getting an autonomous vehicle. The next thing that you're getting is essentially the safest car on the market. Due to the way it's structured and engineered with the battery on the bottom, this car has 5-star crash test rating from every single category, which is almost unheard of because most cars will be 5-star crash test rating but have 4 stars on one category or another, but it still rounds up to 5. This car is 5 stars all the way around. So you are essentially getting the safest car on the market. You're also getting a super technologically advanced vehicle. You have pretty much any feature you want through this center display console. You can even receive over-the-air updates on this vehicle. So whatever technology you don't have today, you can have it 2-3 years from now and not feel like you have to consistently upgrade or change your model because it's all coming through a software update just like a phone does. In addition to these over-the-air updates that this car is going to receive eventually that will potentially make it fully autonomous with the tech it already has today, this car is pretty roomy and practical. You've got plenty of storage space over here in the center console. Under the armrest, you've got a frunk and you've got a trunk. So you've got plenty of different places to store things, even though this isn't the full-size sedan like the Model S is. You have a lot more functionality than you would in a typical sports sedan that's of this size, like the C-Class or the 3 Series. The fifth thing that this car is a performance vehicle. I mean, to get 0 to 60 of 4.5 seconds, you probably have to go through an AMG or M series car. To pay only about $55,000 and have this much power is almost unheard of and really shows the value of this car as compared to those other competitors. So you're an electric car, an autonomous vehicle, the safest car on the market. You're also packed with features and over-the-air updates, and you're a performance vehicle.
All 5 in one car. So if I'm speaking so highly of this Tesla, why don't I recommend you buy one? Well, I think it will still take a few years to work out some of the kinks that have been going on with this car. I mean, the fact that this is essentially a smartphone running your vehicle, you're gonna run into issues. Just like I have issues with my smartphone glitching and stalling. It might not be the perfect daily driver because some mornings it might not turn on. Now, of course, I've only had this car for a day and I haven't run into any issues, but there are plenty of owners out there who have owned this car and have run into problems. The panels don't fit together sometimes. There are some quality issues. And although I haven't noticed it, that doesn't mean that doesn't exist. I think this car has the potential to be the best sports sedan, if not the best automobile to buy maybe 3 or 4 years down the line once the manufacturing process has been worked out and you're able to go to a dealership and pick one off the lot or get one in a week, just like you would with a Model X or a Model S. You can't currently really do that with a Model 3. I think it's still too early. To me, it seems like this car is still a prototype on its way to be developed into a perfect vehicle. So if you're the type of person that really has to have that new iPhone as soon as it comes out, then sure, go to a dealership and buy yourself a Model 3. If you're like me and you'd rather maybe wait a few months before you dive into that new product, then I would recommend you wait another year or two and get the Model 3 after Tesla's worked out some of those kinks. I wish I had more time in this vehicle, but unfortunately I only have it for today. I have had a blast driving it, and like I had mentioned, if you really do want the best and the greatest and newest technology, this car definitely has all that. But if you are willing to wait a few years, I think this car will be the best vehicle that you can buy for the money, to be honest. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know if this should be the next car on the channel, and be sure to find me on Instagram at Schwazy_. Until next time, I will catch you all in the next video. Take care. Have a wonderful day.